When I think back on all the fears when I was pregnant, all of them dismissed except for one. The only test the state mandated was genetic. Looking for that extra chromosome.
Hello and welcome to the If We Knew Then podcast. I'm Stephen Sachs.
And I'm Lori Sachs.
Today we welcome back early interventionist and child development specialist Caroline Bencze-Fernandez. Caroline was a great guest of the podcast who previously explained what early intervention was, what to expect, and how a child development specialist benefits children from birth to 3 years old. Today we'll be diving a little bit deeper into the aspects of early intervention, what tools parents can use at home, and how therapies for children with Down syndrome have changed over the years. Caroline, it's a pleasure to have you back. Thank you for joining us on the podcast.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
When we first met you, you were one of the therapies we were receiving from Regional Center, along with OT and PT and speech. And at the time, I didn't really understand what early intervention, or you as a early interventionist teacher, how that was all going to work out and what your part was, because PT, physical therapy, I know that as an adult. OT, I could understand that. Speech, I obviously understand what that is. But maybe you can talk about how early intervention complements the other services that children may receive.
Yeah, this is how I explain to families. Think of me, I'm the child development therapist, and I sort of monitor all those areas, the cognitive, the gross motor, the fine motor, the social motor. So I'm monitoring all those areas. But if I feel that the child needs a specialized service, then I would refer out, and then that's where the PT comes in, the OT. But I'm sort of just think of like a teacher who's kind of has to go through all the areas of development and kind of work with the family. I mean, I think the child development is kind of the glue that kind of hopefully keeps everybody on the same track and together. I always think a child development person should be, collaborating with all the other therapists, the PT, the OT, and the speech, so that we're all working together. I don't want to say like a home teacher, but because to me, it's more also like coaching, because I'm also teaching the parents as well.
Well, you mentioned being the coach. You are the coach to teach the parents. You're also kind of the quarterback, too, if you think of it, that just kind of understanding what the child needs and then trying to get that done. And it might even be outside of you.
Right. And also advocate, to help the parents learn to advocate for their child and helping them. If something's not feeling right, empowering them to say, hey, this is your child. It's not feeling right. What can we do about it? And giving them the tools to do that. Because once the child's 3 and they go off to the school district, they may need some of those tools, because it's the school district, it's a lot bigger. So I think parents need those tools to kind of be able to stand up and advocate for their child and themselves.
What kind of tools or advice would you give? Because this is, hopefully this will reach people who, there's some people that aren't getting that early intervention. So if somebody doesn't have that, what tools, what gems would you give those parents and advice would you give to advocate for their child?
Well, I always tell families to really go with their gut feeling. And if they're feeling something's not right, question it. Also, always, before signing anything, always just wait and think about it. Always advocate for time for yourself and for the child to figure out what's the best route, and do a little research. I would reach out to people, try to get early intervention if you can, and know your rights, your laws, your rights as a parent of maybe a child with special needs, kind of really looking into that as well.
Over the last 30 years, do you have any favorite tools that you use to support a child, and why are they your favorites?
I do have specific things sort of at every age kind of level or every month level. So there's certain things And I always try to tell the families, well, number one, my Facebook, actually books in general. I think books in general, everybody should sort of have a mirror. A mirror is something simple and easy that I think that I use, and and everybody could use that at home. But there are certain toys and things that I do especially love, like, let's say for babies, like, I don't know if I'm answering the question, but nesting cups can go a long way. And so that's sort of in my bag always, is like nesting cups, blocks, things that a child can use, and then it could grow with them. So it's not just a toy for this 6-month-old, but it could be a toy all the way up. Nesting cups could be a toy all the way up to 3 years old. So there are certain specific things that I don't think they have to have all the fancy light up toys out there. I think it's going back to the basic, simple things, having a mirror, blocks, or nesting cups, books for sure.
When you say Facebook, you're not talking about sign them up on Facebook. You have an actual book, right? That has
Yes.
a book of faces.
I have a couple of books with faces, and all babies, starting at babies all the way up till toddlers, love to look at babies' faces and their expressions. So in the beginning, it's just the baby looking at a baby smiling, or being sad, or whatever, just all faces. So as the babies when they're babies, they love looking at baby pictures. As they grow older, they're going to really love to look at, oh, why is he sad? Oh, he's happy. And then it could turn into, having lots of discussions closer to 2, about what makes you sad, what makes you happy. So, yep, that's a book with different facial expressions is one of them.
You also mentioned a mirror. How can parents use a mirror to help in their child's development?
I love mirror play. Mirror play, well, first of all, both of you could be in the mirror. You could be smiling. The baby is definitely going to be smiling. You could do exaggerated facial expressions. Around 8 or 9 months, they should start imitating those facial expressions and doing things like that. You could be opening your mouth. And then for expressive language, it's beautiful. You could be doing ahs and oohs, and it's really exaggerating, looking in the mirror, and, having the baby do that too. And then the baby then eventually, if he's by himself, look in the mirror, might start talking to himself in the mirror. Hey, there's another baby there. Ooh, bah, and start talking to themselves. So a mirror, I think, is always great. And many homes have mirrors in the house. So you could just use any mirror basically around your house. So I think that goes a long way too.
Nesting cups were another toy or tool you had listed. What are nesting cups, and how can parents use them?
Yes. Okay. So nesting cups are just, the small cups all the way going down to the big cups. And I like those. I introduce those even maybe 4 or 5 months. I just sort of have the baby reach up and try to grab a cup. And as they're working on their sitting, I work on nesting cups, pulling the nesting cups out, and then banging the nesting cups together. Is another developmental milestone. So bang, 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 those cups together. And then it's a great fine motor skill. It's a great cognitive skill. It's, eventually stacking the cups. Stacking is huge developmental milestone. You go, and expressive language, up, 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 up. And then here's the turn taking, down, knocking those cups down. So that's that turn taking back and forth. Here we go. We're going to go up, up, up with the cups. And then having the baby knock them down. There's that social emotional, that cognitive, that cause and effect. I think cups go a long way. And then even after that, they're going to have, there's colors. The cups have colors. You could introduce the colors. Then they're going to have to learn how to put them back. The big one can't go in the little one. Uh-oh, it's that trial and error. Like, what happened? Let's try it again. So I just think it goes a long way. You could also eventually you could do some sorting with them, if it's a red cup, putting the red blocks in the red cup and the blue blocks in the blue cup. So I think cups go a long way, especially birth to 3 or, birth to 3, basically.
And you had mentioned that with those cups, banging is a milestone. Because as a parent, you might be tempted to be, stop that banging. It's so loud. So what is banging as a milestone?
Well, first of all, holding 2 objects at the same time is great. And then being able to figure out, oh, if I put it together, it makes a noise. It's that cause and effect. So it's like, oh, bang, 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 and then it makes a noise. So it's that cause and effect. Like the baby realizes, I could put my hands together and make this noise. And then guess what comes after that? Clapping. So it's like, it's sort of these little steps to teaching all these little things. And then, bang, bang, bang. So and then closer to a year, babies usually still like to do the bang, bang, bang. We sort of, find something else to do. Then we'll redirect them a little bit. A lot of my families go, oh my gosh, they're still banging because it's such a great thing that they could do. They feel empowered that they could do this. So then we work on, well, let's work on stacking now, up, 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 things like that. So yeah, so I know it's that cause and effect. It's like banging on a musical toy, but they're able to now bang two cups together and make this brilliant noise. It's a learning curve or a learning milestone.
And to get a perspective on the foundation that the early intervention creates. So you're starting with the nesting cups and then the banging, and then that teaches the child cause and effect. How does that cause and effect show itself then in the child, and then also that empowerment of being able to create this noise, the sound or music?
It's empowering the child to feel like they're able to do this, and it's a milestone, and he feels good. And then eventually that will turn into, oh, well, if I push this button over here, it'll be musical, and then it'll lead up to shape sorting, like putting a shape into something. Oh, if I try this, oh, I can't do that. These are all little steps leading up to, puzzle play, or, open the busy box, or, things like that.
You go from banging a cup to now you're teaching, you're planting the seed of empowerment. You're planting the seed of I can in the face of so much you can't.
Exactly. And I don't know if you remember, or I've always said, a child's social emotional well-being, their feeling of empowerment and feeling good, the key to learning and the key to success. They cannot learn if they're not feeling that empowerment, or or they're not feeling good. I feel like socially, emotionally, they have to be able to be in a good place to then continue to learn. So yes, so I think that empowerment, and I'm so happy to hear that Liam has that he feels good, that he's just gonna, stand up there and read and continue learning. That to me is so much more important than academics or what all these other things. It's really the learning the child's strengths, showing them their strengths, showing the family their strengths, and then them to then continue to keep learning and going forward.
And these are really challenges for typical parents as well.
Yeah, I mean, my main concern with my two boys when they were little is I wasn't concerned about the fancy academic schools. I wanted my child to feel secure and loved, and in an environment that they were wanting to learn, and I just feel that still to this day that's giving them the confidence to be able to question, or and to feel like they can question is, I think, the key to success. I really firmly believe that.
Well, my little sports brain has now defined you as the coach and the quarterback and now the cheerleader, right? Those are all parts that do fit together well in your work. That cheerleader, that rah-rah, that encouragement is very important. It can't be stressed enough. To go back to kind of some of the tools you use, we didn't discuss blocks, and that's a pretty simple thing that parents may have. Because you have to think, this podcast could also go out to people that aren't in this state. Maybe your job isn't even offered to them. Maybe they can get PT or OT, but the teaching part may not be there for them. Or they have you and they just want to do more, which parents often want to just continue to do this on a daily basis if they only have you once or twice a week or something. How do you use blocks in your therapies and your sessions?
Blocks are great. So as a baby, just having him being able to reach out and grab a block. There's all certain types of grass. So just having him reach out and grabbing a block. Then eventually holding 2 blocks. And again, banging 2 blocks. And then pulling out blocks from containers, taking these blocks out of the containers, because eventually what we're going to want him to do is put the blocks back into containers. So a closer to 1 is when they're really purposely releasing. So that purposeful release comes important. So then we're going to have the kids put the blocks back into the container. It makes a loud noise. It's fun, because as a lot of year-old parents know, when they're sitting in the high chair, they discovered throwing the food off and watching it fall. That's releasing, but it's not purposeful. Not that we don't want them to do that, obviously. So then teaching them to put the blocks in the container, which then will lead to, putting the circle in the sorter or in the square, or it will lead to completing a puzzle, a shape puzzle. And then also blocks even later on is building with them, towers. Up towers, knocking them down, making bridges with blocks, and then pushing a car under, working on expressive language, under, putting it on, around. Those are all, blocks could go a long way. Even, 3, 4, 5-year-olds, they could build with blocks. Block play is very important, even preschoolers, just the way they build with them and kind of having them figure out different, buildings or designs or making cars and tracks. Pretend play is great. So I think it really gives to the imagination. The kids could create and imagine with blocks, building a house or building a garage or building a track or, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you had mentioned the purposeful release and then throwing the food is releasing, but without a purpose.
Yeah.
Go ahead. My question is there, do we want to teach them that's not purposeful and don't throw the food? And if we do you have any advice on how to do that? Or is it just good for them to throw food to the ground?
I would try to catch them before they do it and redirect them. We don't really want them to do that. And then it's a habit that kind of hard to break, but I would, the goal is catch them before they do it and then put the food maybe in the bowl. Maybe put a little bit of less food on the tray so they don't do that. Also, watch out for when, why are they starting to throw it? Is it towards the end of the time? Is it too much food? Trying to see what happens right before they throw that food. But I love 1 and 2-year-olds because it's redirect. And we also don't want, if he did throw it, just sort of ignore it and move on, because we don't, they're not at the age, 3-year-olds maybe could be at the age where it's like, understanding, we don't do that right now. This is, but 1 and 2-year-olds are not quite there where they're not understanding. So we want to really point out just the positives and kind of ignore the behaviors that we don't want them to see.
And as you were saying about throwing the food, then we have to unteach that lesson. One of the things that we see and we're challenged with now that Liam is in the school system and, for so much of the year, he's around other people who allow different behaviors. And then come summertime, we have to undo a lot of Liam gets away with everything or, just certain habits that just shouldn't have been learned. Do you have pointers or tips for parents on how to undo those bad behaviors?
Well, I always tell families, because they say, oh, it's because he's going to the daycare, he's learning this. I say, you know what, though? At home is when you try to either discuss the behavior, like that this is what we don't do that. We don't do this in our home. Or you try to just sort of, it depends how young the child is, ignore the behavior and then focus on just the positives on what he is doing at home. But, if he's old enough to and understanding, you could always just sort of, all kids pick up good and bad behaviors. I say that about everything. And, we just want to focus on what the behavior is, and and just focus on what we want them to do, basically, and then kind of either discussing like, no, we don't do that at home. We don't, whatever it is. Let's say he's throwing something. I'm not quite sure. The remote, I don't know, whatever it is he's doing at home that he learned at school. And then I would discuss it with them. Like, this is not what we're doing at home, but we do it, we don't do this at home, basically. All kids are going to pick up good and bad, they just do. And it's just sort of teaching them that that's not what we do in this home, and talking with them and hopefully learning that they can't quite do that.
I guess the challenge we get is that in the real world, a lot of times Liam gets away with pretty much what he wants to do, because he can outwit, like I always say, if you can get to the fourth time to telling him what to do, if he doesn't want to do something, then he knows you're serious. But for the most part, people will go, do that, and he'll say no. And they'll say, do that, and he'll say no. And then they'll say, do that, and he'll say no, and they won't go. And so then they'll either do it or allow him to continue. If it gets to 3, sometimes it's just the second time they go, okay. Like kids will go, Liam, you can't do that. And he'll do it. And they'll be like, okay, Liam. And so then Liam comes home or out into the real world, and he's like, I could kind of do what I want. And that we have to try to, that's something that we try to undo.
You think of it as a perception in society of just kind of letting Liam do, like, feeling for Liam that he has Down syndrome, and sometimes letting him do what he really wants because it's making him happy, although it might not be the most productive thing. Maybe he doesn't want to do math right now. He'd rather look at his iPad. Who wouldn't? But Liam can sometimes get away with getting someone to allow that to happen. I think maybe you've seen it in the last 30 years, some changes in perceptions, societal perceptions to people with Down syndrome. That might be one that isn't evolving as fast. It isn't changing as quickly. I feel like we always have to push Liam, and he'll do it, but he may be a bit stubborn, and I don't think it's something that is stopped. I think it's kind of allowed to happen, and that's why sometimes it's harder to get through that stubbornness with him.
Yeah, and it's harder for you guys.
Caroline, we always love talking to you because you really have such wonderful information and insight.
Thank you. I mean, it's so funny. I still tell my parents this day, well, parenting is still, or parenting, teaching myself, it's trial and error. We got to figure it out. Let's try this approach. It doesn't work. We're going to try another approach.
And then you say it with such a nice, light voice and a laugh that is calming, because that's not always how parents feel, where this isn't working now, let's try something else, let's just try the next thing. It doesn't come always from a place of a lighter air. It always feels like a little bit of a weight behind it. So it's nice to have you there for all these families, for us. Your kids certainly we're lucky to have you in those formative years too, because you're a professional that where we got to have you by our side and we could kind of be guided a little bit, which would have been great with Sophia as well. But they were pretty lucky to have you there. That's really fantastic.
And Stephen just kind of tapped on, and I don't think we've even talked about it because it's about early intervention. But, just a minute for the parents is that you also give the parents permission to do what we were able to do with Sophia, and they'll get it, and all of those things it just comes with the territory. But with the challenges of a child with Down syndrome, that permission isn't necessarily there, because there's so much going on. There's so much as the parent to try to parent, as the parent of the unknown, trying to figure out how that goes, as working with a disability, and all of those things that, just as a human, to be given the permission to just be it's very liberating. And I think without you ever saying it or being it was your voice, it was your approach, it was the humility that came along with it, where there wasn't anything perfect. It's like, where are we today? And all right, let's be here and see what happens. And man, in hindsight, if we knew then, but in hindsight, you look back and it was that peace that you brought that allowed us, I think it was our formative years. It was our early intervention as well.
Well, thank you. I mean, I every family I work with, I learn from them as well, and I just strive to get better and better. But thank you so much.
Our pleasure.
So I don't. Well, that was a nice conversation with Carolyn, and she had such an impact in our life. And going back, Stephen, to if we knew then. So we're starting. If we knew then, I wouldn't have waited so long for some of the services. I would have been more of an advocate to get some of the services started early, including the early intervention. There's so much information I wish I had, even in the pregnancy or when Liam was first born, to be able to start setting up those services, contacting regional service, and so he would have support from go. I know that would be one thing that I would do. I think I was afraid to ask for things, or I couldn't believe that somebody was going to help me. I didn't really know that it's actually your child's right. So
even with Liam being premature and in the NICU, we were introduced to regional center and kind of got some things rolling. I don't think we asked enough, and I think it's because almost you feel like you're given this gift, and should you ask for more? It's hard to like be given something that you think's a gift and then say, "Hey, any more? Anything else I can get?"
But it's not a gift. It's your child.
It isn't, but that's how
Right.
it kind of came across.
So that
right?
would be, yeah. And you're right. I would ask for what I knew. I know that speech was a really hard thing to get, and we're hoping to get a speech therapist on here, but speech has always been a challenge, and it's a service that's so needed because
so important.
it's the expressive language. Like Liam's there, he's got the receptive, he's got the cognitive, and a lot of times the judgment, especially when it comes to the school system, that falls heavy on Liam is his expressive, and I have to work so hard to prove that nope, it's just he's saying that, you just don't understand what he's saying. And so I think, speech was a service that I would have fought harder for that. I would have definitely have fought harder, and I would have pushed, and I would have asked more questions, and I would have advocated harder sooner.
It's a great question to ask any professional in any therapy. What would you recommend I do? What other services do you think you could give us, or that other families have? And a lot of times those therapists will be open enough to say, oh, well, I do have experience with this other service. It could be speech, or it could be occupational therapy, physical therapy. So it's always a great question to ask a provider. What's your experience with other children that you think my child would benefit from? Services you think my child would benefit from? And a lot of times you're going to have a professional come to you and say, hey, this is my insight, because you really don't have much insight at that time. And if you don't have questions being answered on a podcast or an article that you found or some kind of video, how would you know?
Yeah, I would also trust my gut more, because I know Natalie, for both speech and for PT, I know Natalie had remembered we had gone through a few therapists before settling on her. And I always questioned myself when it didn't feel right in my gut, when I knew this is not a good fit. Or I remember one time we had a physical therapist who used the R word, which that just took that off the table. And I doubted myself. So I would say if I knew then what I know now, I would advocate, ask questions, know what services I can get for my child, and then ask for them and stay on top of that, because it makes the hugest difference.
Well, when together, I guess, but I feel like you were more the front runner of it when we decided this physical therapist just isn't really working out 100% like we want it. And for you to bring to me the option of maybe we can ask for another physical therapist, even the thought of it would stress me. So when we did it, I still, even after I went, oh, did I hurt anybody's feelings? Was this the right thing to do? Is this how things happen? Are we a problem? Are we,
And, in hindsight, though, it was things that were unacceptable. It was someone coming into our home.
It was a no-brainer.
And you could tell just the therapy, if it doesn't feel right. And what's great is now, 10 years later, there is YouTube. There's so many technologies around, and even just speech, the amount of technologies and apps that are out there. So even if you're fighting to get these services, go out there and start looking them up, because they're There's a lot of supports there that are virtual, and hopefully that also makes them more cost effective. And so we can start to support our kids in bigger and better ways, even if we're having to fight to get the support in other manners. We can actually do it in our home. And I think that that's what's so great about technology, is that it's just opening so many doors, and I absolutely love it. And I'm in love with assistive technology.
And this podcast is a bit of technology too. It's going back to old school radio, but it's a way for us when we're parents that have a lot of stuff going on in the day. It seems like parents today are trying to multitask like never before, possibly also due to technology. But to be able to put some headphones on and you can get some stuff done and still listen to some information. It's just a way to inform yourself, which gives you power, which can then settle you and maybe relieve some stress. Please follow us on Twitter at If We Knew Then Pod, and you can drop us a line on our Facebook page at If We Knew Then Pod, or visit our website, ifweknewthen.com, to send us an email with questions and comments. And you can join our mailing list there and get alerts of future podcast episodes. All these links will be added to this episode's show notes. Thank you again, and we look forward to you joining us on the next episode of If We Knew Then.